Hi, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to join our webinar today. My name is Marta O'Donnell, and I'm Marketing Manager at MDR, and I will be moderating the session today. Today, we're going to be talking about a very popular topic, decoding the school purchasing cycle. And we have some great speakers with us today who I'm going to quickly introduce. You'll notice you can see us all on video. It should be to the right or maybe on the top of your screen. So we have Sean McLeod, who's our Digital Products Manager, and Sean works with our customers on all things digital marketing, from email to social media to web advertising. We also have Chris Spearing, who, there's Chris, wave hello. Chris is a sales leader at MDR, and he has over 20 years of sales and marketing leadership experience. Him and his team work with our customers on the East Coast. We're also very fortunate to have another guest speaker joining us, Kimberly Moran, who is a creative strategist at MDR, and We Are Teachers editor. And Kimberly also has 15 years of teaching experience, so she'll be providing us with her unique perspective on the school buying cycle as a former educator. Just before we get started, a couple of quick things. So you'll see, like I said, our panelists are on video today. But don't worry, attendees are not in video mode. The video and audio is turned off for you guys, so we can't see or hear you. If anyone has questions throughout the webinar, you can feel free to type them into the Q&A box, which you'll see on the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat box, but we do encourage you to use the Q&A. That way you can check if you want to submit questions anonymously, and then we won't see your name, or you can also, or it's just easier actually for us to directly answer your questions that way. We can type them in. I have my colleague Melissa here with me, and we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can throughout the webinar. We'll also save some time at the end, though, for a little Q&A too. And then just the last thing, we will be recording the session today, and you all will get a link to view the video and also a link to download the slides by tomorrow. All right, and with that, let's get to the agenda. So first, we're going to be showing an overview of the school buying cycle calendar. And we're going to go through each of the different phases of that calendar and talk a little bit about what's happening within schools during that time, as well as how you can align your marketing efforts to the buying cycle calendar. And then like I said, we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. All right, I think we are ready to get started. So with that, I'll hand it over to Sean.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Before we jump into the calendar, we really want to take a second to talk about laying the groundwork for what we're going to be discussing and approaching the calendar. And I really think the most important piece of information to go into this with is really be thinking about your own marketing strategy as we talk about the approach to the calendar. Each company, each strategy, each team will have a different approach. So we really want to lay that groundwork here and then start talking about some common steps that I think are really important into building that strategy and into approaching the calendar. So one of the things that is going to be most important are your goals and defining your goals. So as we talk through each phase of the calendar, how does this phase apply to your specific goals, whether that's signups, lead gen, and the like. The other thing that I really want to just preface this with is with customer matching and profiling. And I think that this and the account-based marketing bullet that we have on this slide really work well together. And this is about looking at your current customers and informing your strategy moving forward from that point of view. So if that's matching to a highly qualified database, if that's reviewing common threads you find throughout your customer file, these are all really important factors in deciding who you want to target and what your approach will be moving forward. And then market research is something that I love. I'm constantly reading our own internal market research and the market research that we publish. And this could be really informative for messaging and what product for what time frame are you going to market with. So market research will tell you what people are looking for, what devices they're using in the classroom, and any other piece of information that's going to guide your strategy moving forward as we work through the calendar. So with that stage set, we're just going to do a quick poll question, and then we'll dive right into the calendar. So we have a poll. How many phases are in the school buying cycle? All right, and everyone will put their answers in, and then we'll review the answers and jump into the content.
Okay, it looks like about 60% of you guys have voted. I'll give you a couple more seconds to give everyone a chance to put in your answers, and then I'll actually show the results. Okay, looks like almost an even tie between 3 and 5 here. All right. Thank you all for voting. I'm going to show the results really quick.
Great.
Pretty good guesstimate.
Great. So looks 3 was the slight winner, which is great news because as we move on into the next slide, we're looking at now the school buying cycle, and we have 3 defined phases. The first phase we're looking at is goal setting and needs assessment. Then we have information gathering and research, and then we have purchasing decisions made. These 3 phases were really a culmination of a lot of MDR research, years of promoting content into the educational space, and then talking with educators through our market research to say, what are you doing during this time of the year, the next set of months throughout the year, and then when are these purchasing decisions being made? So we've boiled down a lot of the information that we've gathered from the educator space, and then we overlaid that with some of the results that we see with the channels that MDR promotes in to have this school buying cycle calendar where we could really look at when social engagement was spiking, what unique email rates are happening at what time of year, and then really sort of the ad click-through rate that corresponds with each section of this calendar as well. The calendar is a really strong tool for planning. So we can take a look at where we are in the year now, and then make a plan for the next 12 months, or make a plan to lead into our buying cycle, or the purchasing decisions made, and really adjust strategy based on where our audience is in their decision-making process, right? So we know that at all times we can send promotion out, but that promotion really should relate to where somebody is in the cycle. The next slide, as we move through here, this chart is, we took all of the promotion that we did in 2018, and we took the engagement rates for each channel represented in the chart and organized them by month. And the reason that we wanted to present this chart right after showing the calendar is because we want to really implore this idea that it's not going to be what channel should I use at what time of year. It's much more about using as many channels as you have access to and tailoring your message to the time of year. So this sort of upfront planning based on the time of year is going to end up informing sort of what you're saying, not where you're saying it, right? We see engagement across the year in all channels, and it's relatively equal, although you could see that email engagement may shrink slightly in July and August and start to grow again in September. At the same time, it never goes away. And that's really why we wanted to bring this chart to you all, is to show that despite the fact that maybe an educator is home during the summer, they still have access to email and they still engage with email, just maybe not at the same rate as they are in October. And with that being said, while we see email rates shrink in the summer, we also see our paid and organic Facebook grow, which is really interesting because if we're in every channel, as we were able to build this chart, we can see that the educators are there too, really no matter the time of the year. So as we work through this presentation, it's going to be less about should I send an email in July and more about what should my email in July say. And then we're going to jump into one more poll question.
We promised us only one more.
Just this last one, and then we're going to pass it off to Chris to start taking apart each of these periods. So the poll question is, it's up here. Which channels are you currently using in your marketing? We'll give this a minute.
And you guys should be able to select multiple answers on here. Like email marketing is definitely a popular answer, which is not too surprising. Just give you guys a couple more seconds to put in your answer. All right, let's check out these results.
All right, a lot of email marketing.
All right. Oh, sorry. We're seeing in the chats that you were only able to select one answer. Sorry about that. You're supposed to be able to pick multiple. So we'll assume you guys are, most of you are probably using multiple channels, but definitely email marketing, I'm sure, is a popular one and the most commonly used. All right. Back to Sean.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Chris is going to walk us through the goal setting and needs assessment portion of our calendar.
Thanks, Sean. As we've mentioned, goal setting and needs assessment is the first phase. This occurs between May and October. It may vary slightly, but that's generally the good sense. Next slide, Sean. The important part here is that districts and schools are evaluating the results from the current year they're in. They're identifying where they fell short. They're thinking about where they want to be. At this time, or near the end of the year, during this phase, they may even place their goals and needs and what they're trying to achieve on the district website. So that's always a good source. We encourage you to go look at that. What they're thinking, what I want you to think at this point about what the educators and school leaders are, what they're filling gaps that they didn't quite achieve during the regular school year. Goals will be aspirational and possibly focused on academic outcomes, technology progress, or task efficiencies. Your messaging should support this process. Your message and format should match the search habits of the audience, where they're looking, what they're looking for. Get their attention with high-level information they'll be looking for. We can improve your test scores, standards that you meet, integrations that you support, cost savings. Now, do not exclude your key value proposition. You should always include your unique differentiating factor. Rely on your experience. Maybe look through your previous results and previous messaging and responses from decision makers and time what they were saying and when they were saying it. Learn from them what they have told you in the past. Types of content that work here: blog posts and articles, social media posts, infographics. You can see that it's not necessarily the medium, but it is the messaging. High level, again, catch their attention. We have some examples on the next slide. These examples talk about their display ads that identify specific goals. Earn college credit, save on tuition, finish homework faster, elevate student success. It's important that they're high-level messages that have a goal. This is not the time to send a user guide. Gotcha. We want to highlight a really important factor at this point, and indeed at every point in the cycle. We have seen a tendency recently to focus solely on what we'll call deal signers or school and district leaders, and that's important. But there are critical elements to remember. Many people are familiar with the term top-down, bottom-up in the education sales cycle. We'd like to introduce the outside-in model. During this key part of the buying cycle, decision makers are keenly influenced by the people in their building and outside their building. They're influenced by educators with a lot of experience. They're influenced with modern educators who are new and tech savvy. The influence includes committees, task forces, and less obvious hallway conversations. The dynamics of influence require that you carefully consider and include a broader audience. We're fortunate, go to the next slide, Sean. We're fortunate at MDR that we have a ton, as Sean mentioned, of great research. And as mentioned earlier, we have a large portion of our staff that is former educators. We have brought Kimberly Moran here today, who has 15 years experience as an educator, to kind of talk about the importance and how these task force or committees or just informal discussions can impact decisions. Kim?
Hi. So I think that there's a couple of things that are super important to remember. One of them is that principals really, not only do they not really like to be the only one making a choice about purchasing any kind of, furniture for the school, curriculum for the school, anything, they know that the best way to implement something new and to use their the small budgets for something really important is to get buy-in from teachers. But besides getting buy-in from teachers, they also want to access the fact that teachers are out there looking for new information all the time. And so principals can't find that information by themselves alone. So what they oftentimes do is say, hey, why don't you try out something and let me know what you think. And when I was teaching first grade, we had a really hard time keeping enough leveled readers to occupy all of our kids. And so we've found a bunch of different digital sites, and one of them was Reading A to Z, and we all really liked the books, and we started sharing them with each other and using the free trial that we had. And so when it came time to make decisions about budgets, there was a huge line item for leveled books and leveled readers. And we decided that it might be better to use our budget for a subscription so we could access more books. And so we went to the principal and asked if this was something we could shift, and a subscription was purchased. And I say that because I think it's really important to understand that you're not just accessing the person who has the ability to sign the check or sign the budget. You need to access the people who are going to use that as well.
Thank you, Kim. I'm just checking some of the questions here, and we had someone ask, what about librarians specifically? I don't know if you could provide any insight on that, Kim. How much influence do they have in purchasing, especially certain materials like DVDs or video streaming services or things like that?
So that's a really good point, because I think that librarians, the traditional sense of the school librarian is has changed significantly. And so librarians are oftentimes either also a teacher or also in the ed tech, in the media world for the school. And the board of a school and the administrators really rely on librarians to do a lot of research on what are the top books out there, what books should kids, be familiar with when they go to whatever next school they're going to go to. And what digital resources are really considered excellent. So they sort of vet those for people. So reaching librarians is a huge segment of that literacy world.
Great, thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you, Kim. It's always great to have input from teachers for people who are really in the field. So coming out of this section, remember, your messaging should get their attention. It should be high level. It should support the goals or needs that they have based on the evaluation of a previous year. Sean's now going to move into the intricacies of phase 2.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kim. So now we're moving into information gathering and research, and we really want to carry the momentum over from our previous goal setting and needs assessment section, because now we're going to be gathering information about the goals that we just set and the needs that we've just assessed. So districts are going to be exploring products and instructional initiatives that address the needs they have defined. This looks like sample requests, visiting your website, reading your content, and really digging into professional development and the merits of each professional development course that they may be looking at. I think that Best case scenario is that the goals and needs that they're trying to research right now, you all help them set. I think in the last phase, we're helping them define how they can improve scores, save time, save money. And now that they're out researching how do we do that, this is an excellent opportunity to be in front of the audience and saying to them, here's how we meet this goal, right? Here's some content on our website that you can come and review and help you address your needs. So when we start talking about actual messaging and types of content, I love the free trial giveaway approach, because you get your product in the hands of your audience, you get them used to using it and comfortable with it pre-purchase, and that's something that's great, where when Kim talks about the teacher supporting the sale, if the teacher has something in their hands, they're really able to support that sale well and have proof of concept. Webinars are great. Free downloadable content and coupons are also great encouragement for people to engage further down the line with you, or as they make their way down your marketing funnel. I think that when you start putting this content together, when you have people visiting your website, thought leadership is something that is invaluable. If someone's trying to solve a problem and you're out there putting content that really helps them solve that problem, you're building a really nice layer of thought leadership that they say, oh, I know that this company can help with the need that we've assessed. This comes right along with speaking to the value, improving value of your products, of your offering, of your PD course. While people are out gathering research and information, this is an excellent opportunity to stand in front of them and say, hey, this product brings this value to your problem. This product will help you solve the problems that you've defined. So really demonstrating your capability, demonstrating your thought leadership, and bringing your value to the forefront of the conversation is really a perfect fit for the information gathering and research period of the school buying cycle. Some examples of that. So this, we have some live examples here with free downloadable content. We have a thought leadership piece here. Want to infuse motivation into your entire school, right? That's the type of question that could be really engaging for someone who that's one of their goals. They said, hey, you know what? We need to motivate these kids, and here's an article helping me do that. And then a free sample giveaway, which again, I am a big fan of, because not only are you getting your product in the hands of someone, you're also generating leads in the process. So now that we've walked people through setting their goals and assessing their needs, we're helping them gather information and research. Chris is going to take us through the purchasing decisions.
All right, so now we've come through the winter, and it's April and May. So this is the time when purchasing decisions are made. So congratulations, it's springtime and you are nearing a win. You've probably been narrowed down to a small group of could-be's or very likelies, and this is the time to seal the deal. The messaging here that makes you look like the only reasonable solution. Most of the districts have decided, they've been through the committees, but that doesn't mean the committee's work is done or your messaging work is done. Messaging should refresh the recollection of those involved. Remind the committee members, remind the decision makers. It's also important to show here how implementation or delivery or usage will go smoothly. I'm about to sign a big deal with you or purchase a lot of your product. I want to be convinced it's a great idea. So here we say, remind the signer. Include and allow the community to lend further support to the decision. Teachers can start now to get excited about new Chromebooks or a new system. You can imagine a teacher walking down the hallway or a curriculum director saying to the principal just before this happens, hey, we're excited about those Chromebooks coming in next year, or whatever they might be purchasing. So some of the things that work here would be demos and free trials. Let's move on to some examples here. Free trial offers are very good here. You're going to smooth in implementation by providing them with a trial. You're going to provide customer case studies. You and your sales team or your marketing messages have told them that your decision is the only one they should make, but your case studies tell them from a third party. Someone else is now giving them information that I am making this decision based on the right information and based on what other people are doing. Coupons and discounts. This will seal the deal too. As they're coming in to purchase hair, here's a last minute offer, or here's an offer that can ease the purchasing pain on this decision. It's important to note here, there are overlaps in the cycle. Some sales will defy the cycle. Some sales will happen very shortly, and some will take 2 cycles. We all know that answer to the great question, how long is your sales cycle? And my answer has always been somewhere between 3 days and 3 years. But most sales will follow the decision-making cycle we've outlined. Some closes, it's important to note that, as I mentioned, some will last much longer. It's important to maintain messaging that reaches all levels of the sales funnel here. There was a question that we received before the webinar that asked, should I stop my top of funnel work when I'm focused based on these phases? And the answer is, we never stop top of funnel work. What you do is you find things in the funnel to move down through the funnel based on these phases and the interactions you're having on these phases.
All right, thank you, Chris. So while we're talking, and we keep using the word cycle, and I think it's really important to use the word cycle because it doesn't stop, right? This is something that continues year over year, school year over school year, and marketing plan over marketing plan. So as we go through purchasing decisions made, if in the calendar, we actually have purchasing decisions made doesn't stand alone as its own period. It's a section of 2 joining periods, because the cycle doesn't end. We really always want to be moving people through our funnel, and we want to be thinking about, okay, what worked this past year, what did not work this past year, and what can we do to improve our results? So reviewing your last year of promotion or your last cycle of promotion is going to be paramount to improving your next cycle. One of my favorite projects to do for reviewing promotional campaigns is to take my top 10 and my bottom 10. And I like to start looking for themes. What was working successfully in a number of my top 10 email campaigns? And what failed me in my bottom 10 email campaigns? And oftentimes there's a theme that you can find or a running thread of things within the bottom performing campaigns that you could point to and say, hey, you know what? When we use free, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked for at least these 10 campaigns. But when we use complimentary, we're able to improve our results. As an example, reviewing your new customers. I think that this is something that is really important. We touched on it in the beginning when we started talking about preparing for the cycle and matching and profiling our customer base. Reviewing our new customers, looking at maybe the district that bought from us this year and comparing them to existing customers, and then finding lookalikes in the sense that, hey, this district was really interested in what I had to offer. What other districts might look like this district for my next cycle so that I can make sure that they're in my funnel, they're one of the accounts that I'm focusing my marketing on. And then refresh your targeting. After you've decided on who your new prospects are, who is at what stage of your funnel, you want to refresh the targeting. You want to rethink through who you're emailing, who you're serving ads to, who your direct mail messages are going to, and you want to refresh that maybe several times during the cycle, but absolutely after you've gone through one purchasing decision made period, because now you're able to make really informed decisions about who's going to buy from you. I am constantly trying to rename the marketing funnel to the dismay of many of my coworkers, but I really like to think of it more of an assembly line, because you want to be pushing your leads to the next station, and it does take work, right? You want to have some marketing apparatus ready at each station as you push your leads down the line to completion. So these aren't just happening. This is all stuff that takes a lot of forethought, planning, and execution.
So I see a lot of good questioning activity, and we're almost at the point we're going to address some questions, and we want to get to as many as possible. But before that, we wanted to talk about a primary concern of most people. But what if I don't have a huge marketing budget? It sounds like an awful lot of work. The important thing to remember is that all of these recommendations can scale. We have used account-based marketing, and Sean and I sometimes say school and district-based marketing, to make sure you're focusing resources on winnable accounts. We have seen customers who come to us and say, well, I really have identified 200 school districts where I want to be successful, and I really only need to close 30 of them to be successful. That can work. What happens is you focus and you expand your audience and you direct your audience to the people who are making decisions and the people around them making decisions, and you reach them via all channels. They can scale based on, sometimes we get precisely target audiences that perform extremely well. Use market research to inform your strategy. We've mentioned this all the time. You have to research and understand what has worked with your targets in the past. We can help you with targets. You can help with the messaging that has worked in the past. Results, reports, and interactions always inform what's working. If your market research shows your brand is well established, then focus more on lead generation. We say here, balance success with needs. If everybody knows who you are, you can move right to lead generation. It's not always what channel or how many channels you use, it's the story you are telling. Just like the buying cycle, every story has a beginning, middle, and end. Allow your efforts to tell your best story. Marta?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Like they said, we have had a lot of questions coming in, so we've got plenty of time to go through these and kind of make this a little more conversational just with our panelists. So one that came in more towards the beginning was, where do you guys see webinars fitting into the purchasing cycle kind of as a marketing tactic? And specifically, someone asked, what kind of webinars would people want to do during the last phase, the purchasing decision phase, versus like a beginning stage one? So I'll throw that over to Chris and Sean.
That was one of the first questions. I really like that question.
Great.
It hits on a lot of things. I don't know that webinars have to occur in a particular phase. And Sean, jump in if you think or disagree or agree or add more. I think the key point is webinars are a channel, right? They're a way to reach people. It is important that your webinar have the proper message for the proper time. Reviewing our user, I use the user guide because that's the driest, and that clearly would fit into an information gathering phase. But in the goals assessment, in the goals and needs area, you would want to be high level. Again, my vision is high level, get my attention, tell me you're going to help me achieve something in the next year. The next phase, give me all the information I need to be convinced that your decision is correct. And in the end, tell me it's going to be easy, remind me why I thought you were great, and maybe get my people using it right away. Sean, any thoughts on that?
To the second half of the question, that as we're getting closer to the buying cycle, I think that if you are speaking directly to your customer base right before the buying cycle or potential customer base, I think maybe you want to focus on ways that you support your product, your service. You want to talk about how maybe customer success stories, and you really, as people are trying to make that decision, one of the edges that the educators, and especially the districts and principals, are looking for is, am I going to be left alone after I make this purchase, or am I going to be well supported? So a webinar towards the end of the cycle can really spend some time on demonstrating what value you bring post-purchase.
Great, thank you guys.
Sure.
We had another one that was, sorry.
The influential teachers one?
Sure.
Okay, I see one, right? How do you determine influential teachers? There's so many ways. Some of that is the hard answer is experience. My team has an average of more than 20 years of building lists and identifying that. That's the hard answer. The easy answer is pattern. Pattern based on who your customers are and who your users are. You have the gold in your records that tells you who liked your particular solution and who uses it. We can match that to educators, and then based on what we learn about those educators, build an additional audience of people who look exactly like your influencers.
Yeah, and I think you can inform that with, if somebody made a purchase this year and you go back, if you're offering a free trial, right? Go back and see who downloaded your free trial from the district that made the purchase or from the school that made the purchase, and that might help drive you in a direction. I have a slightly different answer though, and mine is to not assume who the influencers are. And really, when I am informing targets for schools, I like to say that we shouldn't assume, and maybe we should reach out to as many of the people that you can reach in that school that has fit into maybe one of your higher potential lead targets. Oftentimes I'm surprised by creative that teachers react to, or messaging that teachers react to, or what teachers are reacting to that creative and messaging. So I take a little bit more of a broad-based approach to that, and I say that if you have a school that you think this school is bottom of funnel, they're ready, I would approach almost everybody in that institution. But if you want to be smart, like Chris's approach, then there are data-driven ways to match your customers, use that intelligence to inform what roles at a school are informing the decision. So I think there's two ways to approach it.
There's actually an opportunity here to talk about one thing that we've done with our database recently in just the past year and a half, is that we now have not just influential teachers, but we have decision maker influencers. These are people who do not have educator titles. They may be the business manager in the district office. We call them influencers, and we think we've added 126,000, approximately 126,000 individuals who do not have educator titles, who sit either next to or very close proximity to the people who do the buying. Sorry for the plug.
That's fine. Thank you for those answers. I'm going to throw one over to Kimberly. So people are asking, do you see any differences in the purchasing cycle for different types of products? So say curriculum, like core curriculum type products that might be like a higher price point sale versus supplemental resources, or versus like PD, professional development purchases. Maybe Kimberly can talk a little bit about that, or Chris and Sean too. Throw in your insights.
I can tell you what I witnessed, what I've experienced, which is that it's not so much the cycle's different as how many cycles it might take to get to something. So I think when you're talking about changing a whole curriculum, schools are sort of notorious for subcommittees to decide who's going to be on the subcommittee, and so it can take a bit of time and to get to that point. But that doesn't mean that whole time shouldn't be spent getting your product, your name, into the hands of teachers and in front of teachers' eyes, because the more they know about what something does, the faster they'll push something to go, to get on board. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys have anything to add? Should we move on?
Great.
Okay. All right. Do you guys see any other?
I want to answer them all.
Yeah, I know. And there have been tons of questions, and just so everybody knows, we will address all of them. If not on the live webinar, we will definitely follow up with you afterwards via email or a quick phone call.
Can I pick one?
Yeah, sure.
So the question is, we are starting to sell into schools now. How can we be effective selling from March through June, even though we don't have the benefit of previous sales and marketing efforts?
I was going to pick that one.
You can answer.
Great question.
Go ahead.
Correct my answer.
No.
This is a great question, and I think that one reason why we want to talk about the school buying cycle is not to say you have to start at the beginning of the cycle and you have to end at the end of the cycle. It's really much more about knowing where your audience is at this time of year. So even though you haven't led into this phase of the buying cycle where people are researching and information gathering, the fact doesn't change that that's what they're doing, right? So if you're just joining the market now, and let's say in March you're starting your promotion, I would just do it with the thought that your audience is right now out there researching and trying to gather as much information as they can to solve their needs and goals. And maybe you didn't help them set those needs and goals and you weren't there in that sort of formative stage. You can be there now while they're looking for solutions. So I think it's a messaging question maybe about, hey, here's benefits we bring to your institution, or here's benefits we bring to your classroom, or did you know using this tool can increase test scores by X amount, right? So we don't have to get away from the buying cycle just because you didn't have a head start on it. I would still leverage the mode that your audience is in and then apply that to your messaging.
I agree. And I wanted to add just a couple of things, right? So like we mentioned, top of funnel happens all the time. So we're always doing that. That's not phase relevant. The other part is I kind of would let them tell you what part of the phase they're in. The question we always ask sometimes is, when do people buy your products? Well, they always buy in April, May, and June, right? So But I think that if you interact with them, the time is irrelevant because they're going to tell you what phase they're in. The phase is going to generally match this calendar. The important point is to focus based on who is moving closer to that phase. As they move down your funnel, surround them multiple channels, surround them with multiple messaging, and keep the messaging in line with where their needs are. Is that confusing, or is that?
No, I think it's good.
Okay.
Do you have one that you have picked out, or?
How much does I'll pick one right now. How much does the purchasing cycle change from one state to the next, especially factoring things like release of Perkins funds? I think the states are going to have minor differences. They all kind of follow, like we had mentioned, at the end of the year, they're going to evaluate their year, and then they're going to have to probably prepare information for what they expect and what their goals are. Then they're going to gather information from the vendors who have been able to get their attention. So get their attention, provide them information, remind them why you're great. I don't think it's going to matter state to state. I don't have exact information on that, but the whole cycle was built based on years of research, market research, and we asked educators what they were going to do. And this is what we developed. So minor nuances, but I think it's going to follow the same.
Yeah.
You have any like Marta?
Yeah, let's see. So we also had a couple of people who sent in questions ahead of time, so I want to make sure to just get to a couple of those. We didn't forget about you guys. So one was, and we did kind of address this, if stage one or the first stage of the buying cycle is over, should you just stop the top of funnel content development? Like, should that type of content be put on hold? Or is it just that you'll see more engagement with that content during stage one?
Yeah, and Chris addressed that during one of his slides, but I think the simple answer for me is that if you aren't feeding the top of funnel, you're not going to have a middle of funnel, and you're not going to have a bottom of funnel over time. So if you aren't sort of feeding the beast, and you aren't just constantly trying to generate those top of funnel leads, that sort of interest, you won't be able to leverage the bottom of your funnel. So I would never stop trying to get people interested, no matter the time of year. I think the messaging is what's going to change. So somebody might become a top of funnel lead based off the messaging you're doing in May, even though typically you would expect top of funnel people to come in over the summer. So that's how I would approach that.
I think I'm going to try and blend a couple questions in here, and then I'll go with one that I see a couple of questions about here. Do we have data on, and this is totally setting Sean up, do we have information on engagement across different channels, such as, I don't know, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest? And I'll set that aside for Sean is an awesome source of that. We just looked over graphs this morning and talked about this. So we do have that information. Then there is, do we have metrics on how to target decision makers such as principals and superintendents? I'm going to say, yes, we do. We know how they react to the different channels we utilize and how they engage with the content that we provide for them. And then there was another question about, do we have data on channel preferences for each of the buying cycles? And I think there's something to be teased out of some of the data that Sean provided there, that you can see that while that is a macro view of how the population viewed, there are ways to look at that and see which channel. I think if we go, I don't know if we go back to that slide.
Yeah, can we go back?
Can we go back to that slide? That's a great question.
You asked so many questions in a row. I'm trying to decide which is I'm most excited to answer.
I know you want to talk about the social engagement file that you looked at this morning.
That's a good one.
There we go. There we go. This one. Yes.
So this, and maybe I should have spent more time with this.
Well, again, it's
earlier.
macro, right? So it doesn't break it down by role or title.
Yeah. So this is macro. This is if you guys aren't familiar with MDR, we send hundreds of millions of emails. We serve millions of ad impressions across many channels, and we also have sort of organic Facebook and Twitter channels that we use all the time in constant outreach to the educational space. So what I did in this chart is we took all of that from 2018 and we aggregated each month's channel performance into these bars. So the larger the color in each bar, the more engagement we saw in those channels month to month. And this is really an informative slide for us because when we visualize it this way, you could see that the variation channel to channel is actually pretty slight at a macro level. So we do see some channels really outperform others as maybe the weather gets nicer. People might be more on their mobile devices, and that's where we see Facebook advertising and organic really spike. We see email go down a little bit. But we used to say in the summertime, we really weren't doing a lot of email. Because we're emailing professional addresses, and it doesn't make sense because these educators weren't necessarily in the classroom. But what we found is as more people engage with email on their mobile devices, the email channel really has been revitalized in the summertime over the past few years, to the point where I would no longer recommend you stop emailing in the summer, for example. Things like organic Facebook should be a steady stream. Month over month, year over year. Organic Facebook has lower initial investment besides your time or your team's time. And it's something that pays dividends because when we start talking about thought leadership, when we start talking about customer experience or proving value, your social media channel is a place that people will go and look, right? They want to see how you engage with your community. They want to see what type of content you're putting out there. And you should sort of think of that as a nice billboard that people could drive up to and experience what you have to offer from a promotional sense. So I am a big proponent of all channels all the time. But I think that there's some considerations like budget and that go into that. But we really don't see any one channel fade away at any point of the year.
Two more I'm looking at is, Sean's gonna like this question. Is engagement metrics something we would buy from you and market ourselves, or would our marketing team give you the graphics and services we want to sell and you do all the work, or is there a balance? That's like 3 questions in one, and the answer is yes. Yes. We can provide either the data for you to identify your audience and deliver your own content. We can create content for you in the form of ads, or we can deliver the ads for you. It really is, and the key word there is balance. Balance is really key. I see a concern I mentioned. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I just think we read a question before, but we didn't address it about what social media channels.
Right. Do we have stats on other ones?
Yeah. So we actually were, I was in the process of putting materials together about this morning with Chris at my desk. But we don't talk a lot about LinkedIn, because I saw that was one part of that question maybe.
2 people asked that question. Yeah.
Our research shows that educators really aren't in LinkedIn in the way that they are in other channels. And I think when we talk about preference, there's 3 top social media sites that have preference: Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Really outshine other channels for preference. And then when we talk about for professional use, it's really Pinterest and Facebook. LinkedIn really doesn't make the mark for educators using it professionally, using it for social community. LinkedIn really just, it hasn't made a big impression in the educational community from our research. And we spend a lot of time looking at this too. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time in the social media space for education, and LinkedIn just hasn't really come up. Instagram is popular for personal use, maybe not professional, but really Pinterest and Facebook are the top 2. All right.
There was a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was just going to add, I think more recently, even just in, say, the last year or 2, Instagram has become a lot more popular among the teacher community, though. And we actually did just do a poll in the last few weeks. We had a survey running to specifically ask teachers about how they use Instagram, both personally and professionally. And we're excited to release the results of that soon. So we will have some new, fresh data specifically on Instagram soon for you guys.
There was a question about, we didn't talk much about rates and results on direct mail. We do a ton of direct mail work. I don't have stats. They don't match up kind of in the same discrete way. It's a little tougher, but I am very confident. I'm very bullish on direct mail. I do actually know from another part of my life that there's a lot of actually CV investment in direct mail technology. But I don't have any stats on that, but we do. It is important to mention that still the same targeting is important. There you get into different things about limiting numbers going to buildings, but the same targeting is important, and the same messaging is important. Sometimes it may be a catalog, sometimes it might just be a postcard. I think if you're going to, the obstacle sometimes is expense, and you're not going to do 4 mailings a year, but I think it's important that to mention that the messaging, if you are looking at these phases, would follow the same pattern. I do see a lot of questions about specific products, and we all want to answer them, and Sean and I, our emails are on here, right, Marta?
Yes, we actually, Sean, go up a
Next.
couple slides. It'll have their contact info. So we'll just do one more question, how about, and then we can wrap things up. So what about use it or lose it purchasing? Is that also mostly happening in April, May, or June, or is that kind of, is that happening earlier maybe in the year or later? Any thoughts?
I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I think our clients, oh, we do have a panelist who would like to respond to that. Certainly. Should we introduce her?
Yeah, just one second. So I'm gonna unmute our marketing director, Christina James, who, she go.
We have some input from our team that's been listening, and they say, yes, it's April, May, and June. I'm sure Christina may want to add more to that.
Yeah, hi.
Oops, sorry about that.
Sorry about that. Can you,
Maybe mute. Usually June 30th is what I'm told. June 30th is the end of the fiscal.
yeah, we're getting a little bit of some
feedback,
feedback, Christina.
I see multiple members of our knowledgeable population who's been listening for us, and internal MDR folks, and there seems to be a pretty resounding agreement is May and June with a June 30 end date. So again, messaging there would be, if your product lends itself to that, you're probably not going to sell a school-wide system or a district-wide system with use it, lose it money. We do actually have some information on the school supply cycle that is a little bit different, but that's kind of a different subject. That's why I said, as we get into individual products, someone asked on the questions, they asked about cleaning supplies, someone asked about furniture, someone asked about particular products. I think that's a conversation we would love to have with you, and we can help you. If we don't have the answer, we can help you find the answer. And again, it may come back to patterning and customer pattern recognition, which we do for you, but we would gladly help to find that on individual products, or actually have a discussion about that. I don't want to get into individual products because there are some variations, but generally, and I think that question about use it or lose it is pretty succinct, in that I got to use my money by June 30th. So I would expect that to be April, May, and June.
All right, thank you guys very much, and thank you all for submitting so many questions. Like I said, we will definitely be getting back to you. I just chatted out the links that are showing on the screen right now. The first one is our kind of webinar homepage, if you will, on our site on MDR Education, and that's where you can find links to any of our past webinars, the recordings, and the slides. We'll be putting this one up there tomorrow, and you can also see our calendar for any upcoming webinars. I just put a couple of our recent reports up there, the Digital Marketing Trends Report and the K-12 Education Landscape Report. Though a lot of the data and information that we talked about during this webinar today came from those reports, so you can definitely download those to kind of dig more into that data. And Sean, if you can just go to the next slide, I'm going to just put up both of your contact information. And if anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to email them directly. You can email us at mdrinfo@dnb.com as well, which I'm chatting out right now. That will also go to us. And I think that's all we have for you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.